Lois.
I'm coming.
Right. Thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging on. Should be a great night. We've already had a great conversation in the car. This is Andre, Talk TV. And Lois is over there, mind your own business. So she'll be up in a second. We're going to do a bit of presenting, bit of talking first. And then we're going to have a break and then question and answers.
You know that it's Andre that got me into this fear.
So anyway, welcome, Andre. Welcome, Lois.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I understand you faced a minor boycott, but at least on this occasion it wasn't my fault. That's a good thing to know. Look, we are standing at a really important time, aren't we? Where the whole media establishment, the whole political establishment, and everything that we have understood in the past seems to be collapsing and disappearing. Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated as President of the United States of America on Monday. And I think what that creates is a resurgence of the Anglosphere, because I'm somebody who is not willing to stand in front of you today and say that there is equal but different. If you believe in voodoo magic, then you are not equal but different. If you believe, like President Xi of China, that we should be exploiting people across the world, that we should be exploiting human rights, that we should be destroying democracy and infecting the world with whatever he's intending to infect the world with this week, I think that that is not equal but different. We need to stand up and say that we invented democracy, we invented rule of law, we invented freedom, and we demand and insist that this country maintains that freedom, whether the woke brigade like it or not. And I've got a message for the College of Policing, and it's very simply this: that report that says that being rude to somebody on Twitter leads to genocide is the biggest pile of shite I've ever read in my life. It is simply completely untrue. And what it is attempting to do, I would suggest to you, is this: they are attempting to stop us from being honest, stop us from speaking, so that they can wash the country through with uncontrolled immigration, make Britain the trash bin of the world, and then, and only then, can they enact the socialism that they've always wanted to do. Because the freedom-loving countries like Britain, America, Australia, Canada, all these countries are never going to allow the socialism that these people want. But if those countries can be broken in half by uncontrolled immigration, by destruction of democracy and reduction of freedom, then that is what will enable them to enact the plan that they want. And I get very upset, by the way, with things like the World Health Organization, where you pay the bill for these organisations. And let me tell you something about that fake Dr. Tedros. He's not even a real medical doctor. You know, we are constantly told about the EU, about the UN, about the World Health Organization. Well, they might not be perfect, but at least it's better than nothing. Let's just be clear. During COVID, the World Health Organization was worse than nothing. All they did was attempted to spread conspiracy theories. Yes, I'm sorry, they were guilty of that, not us. Secondly, their priority was to defend the reputation of communist China. And thirdly, now what they want to do is take the power to put in lockdowns whenever they want, for whatever reason they choose. My message to the World Health Organization is, we'd been better off without you. And then you look at the United Nations, the Sex for Food program, where the parents of children in Haiti had to give their children to child rapists in order to get food so they didn't starve to death. The UN's better than nothing. No, I'm sorry.
They're supposed to be the good guys.
I'm sorry, I don't accept that the UN is better than nothing. I think the Sex for Food programme and what Oxfam did to support it is an absolute shambles. Then you talk about the European Union. You know, whatever way you think about and look at Ukraine, I was with somebody from Ukraine yesterday and they said, oh, Brexit was a mistake. Well, hang on a second. You wouldn't have a country if we hadn't left the European Union. Because whether you like Boris Johnson or not, whether you like Vladimir Zelensky or not, doesn't bother me. This country was able to make its own decision about how it intervened in international affairs, whilst the EU planned to do absolutely nothing. So I thought I'd set the tone which is, let's be clear, slightly ranty. But then again,
He does let me speak sometimes.
we were drinking on the train, and so I'll tell you what I wanted to do. I just wanted to give you a bit of an introduction. I am going to say to you, the one thing that Lois and I do want to do is to listen to what's going on locally. I appreciate that's a bit of a poison chalice with this audience, but nonetheless, we do want to, simply because we feel that the world is changing. I don't think that we as a movement get everything right. I do accept that, but I do think that we are starting to get this country back for the young people that are having it taken from them. And when I look at young people, I do feel sorry for them, for the fact they can't get a house, for the fact that they're told because they're a white person, they're fundamentally evil, to be discriminated against in education and employment. It's really shameful. But I think we're going to win. But what we'll do first of all in this format is I'm going to talk a little bit to Lois about what she thinks is going on and how we can move this country forward. And then we'll take questions from you. I suspect the matter of reform vetting will come up. I just want to make clear to you, we're not representatives of the Reform Party, but I do think it's an important topic simply because we need to get this right, because to fracture any movement or any organisation at this time is a dangerous thing to do. So I'll sit down now and I'll speak a little bit to Lois. So, Lois.
Hello.
Did you know where this place was to start with?
No.
Okay. Look, I know
Lancashire.
yeah, that's right. I know Lancashire, that's it.
Well, we had quite a lot to drink on the train, didn't we? And then we had other than that. So we haven't had an explore yet.
Don't tell them that.
No. Oh, right, okay. I'm sorry.
Got to the hotel wait today. Lois, look, people are going to be quite interested in your background simply because you started off, am I allowed to say?
Oh my God!
As a new Labour spin doctor.
Yeah, well, I believed, you have to forgive me for this, when I was 13, 14, I was canvassing for New Labour,
Yep.
and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. You can be a capitalist, you can believe that people can have a few quid, and you could be a good person. As I say, please, forgive me, I was 13.
And what part of Tony Blair was good person?
I bought into it. I did. I bought into it. I was very young, and I went for gold. Yeah.
I remember, do you know, Lois, I remember that Saturday night after the 1997 general election,
Yeah.
and I was in a club in Newton the Willows, the dizzy heights, and Things Can Only Get Better came on, and the atmosphere was absolutely on fire. People genuinely believed that the country was in the doldrums, and this guy was going to make everything brilliant. Where did it go wrong?
Well, we had that chairman, obviously we had Major, and it was exciting. He did capture the mood of the nation. Whatever you say about him, and I now understand what he was and what he wanted to do, which is to destroy Great Britain.
Mind you,
but I didn't know that then.
To be fair, a cheese sandwich is exciting and innovative compared to John Major, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and the paperclip. Do you remember the paperclip on the back?
The Cones Hotline was my favourite. Well done, John.
Mind you, if he thought that, shagging Edwina Curry was exciting, it must have been.
Well, she's low at the time.
It couldn't have been that great at home, could it?
I don't want peace tonight, Norm, I'm having a curry.
God almighty.
That's the normal level if I'm being totally
I'm
honest.
sorry about this. But yeah, so I bought into it. And then when I was a little bit older and I was doing PR, I was brought in as a consultant. Yeah.
So then, right, so I think there's a load of people in this room, and I've not met everybody, who kind of, during that period, were a bit homeless politically. Didn't really know what to do.
Right now?
Yeah, and I think kind of thought to themselves, well, there's something going wrong with the country, but we can't necessarily put our finger on it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, and other people can disagree in the comments, I think that then there's just a massive fast forward to the whole issue with whether we should join the euro, which was kind of the next big thing. And I think loads of us instinctively were thinking this is a really bad idea. But I don't remember at that time us being really as knowledgeable as we are now on what we wanted to do about it.
Well, I was a pretty strange kid, to be honest.
Well, that was the fact.
And I remember staying up and waiting to hear what the results of the meetings in Maastricht were when I was, 10? Because I
Sorry, that is strange, isn't it?
Because
normally, I'll be honest with you, the people the women that like that don't normally end up looking like you, if I'm being honest.
Oh, shut up. But no. But anyway, yeah, so I remember thinking, you know, I don't want to not have the pound.
Yeah.
It was a real thing for me.
But was that an emotional response?
Yes, it was. It was emotional.
Mind you, you were 10. I mean,
it was emotional. I mean, the pictures on my wall were probably Bros and Blackadder. So yeah, it was an emotional response.
Well, I'll tell you what amazed me. I was thinking back about that period of time, and you know, Maastricht, and then Blair coming in and whatever. And you know, Gordon Brown's government cost twice as much as the defeat of Nazi Germany.
Did it?
Which even though we're talking about obviously inflation.
Yeah, or even taking that into account.
No, it is extremely. But that would be extraordinary, wouldn't it?
No, it certainly would.
But even then, because of the way that Gordon Brown had kept us out of the euro, I still think he was money well spent.
He knew that he wouldn't be Prime Minister if he took us into the euro. He knew that when Tony Blair handed over to him, which was the deal, that we wouldn't vote for him. You're right. The fact that he kept us out of the euro is possibly the only good thing that Gordon Brown did. Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Yeah. The one-eyed Scottish monster. But all of that, I guess, is a prelude then to the awakening that I felt happened. And I'll tell you a little bit about my dad, Lois. My dad was a director of the Co-op. He was on the Lancashire Football Association executive. And, you know, he's one of these people who was just a kind of...
Did you play football?
Yeah, I'm fucking brilliant. Why are you asking that? I mean, what's that? Oh, no, let's have a kick around right now, Jesus.
Was it like an Alan Carr situation?
The football I didn't inherit. Although, to be fair, he's a Greek, I inherited the kebab eating. But not the football.
Okay, so that's good.
But I think what then happened was, I fast forward to the whole thing about leaving the European Union, and I just think there's a fundamental dishonesty that we have to remind everybody. When we open up the history books, when we watch documentaries, and they say that Brexit divided the country, they are lying. Brexit did not divide the country. No. Everyone had a perfectly civilised debate.
Yeah.
What divided the country was the dishonesty and the attempt to get a second referendum. That's what divided the country.
Yeah, because it showed that in plain sight that basically they didn't respect what the people thought. It didn't matter. They were idiots, they were silly, they were stupid, they voted for something that was, you know...
The plan was, as far as I'm concerned, and I think Jean-Claude Juncker said this, that effectively Britain would be the Texas of the EU. Yeah, they're the moany people, but fundamentally they're going to stay a part of the EU. Our job was to confirm that we were going to... And actually, do you know something? I actually opposed the referendum at the time. And do you know why I opposed the referendum? Because I thought...
Because you're a pain in the arse?
Well, we are. And you know, funnily enough, I do think we are the awkward squad.
We are the awkward squad.
But I'll tell you why I opposed the referendum, because my fear was that with all the media against us, with the BBC against us, with all the political parties against us, with all the trade unions against us, what we would actually do is vote to confirm, vote to confirm we were willing to accept federalism. Because I don't think there was a status quo option on that ballot paper.
No,
it was either you are going to become the United States of Europe or you are going to leave the European Union. And I feared the referendum was going to make things worse. But I mean, clearly I was wrong.
Well, for me, I always said that my head and my heart were completely, you know, in conflict at that point.
Really? Why?
Because my granddad told me what to think. and I was a very good girl and I did what he said. But Nandad, that's what I called him, my grandfather believed in the whole concept of the European Union in its original self.
Yeah.
Not as a super state, not as an unelected, undemocratic body, but as a trading partner, as a trading body. You know, that's what he thought.
I think the other thing, my point...
Sorry, I'm over 40. Please turn the main lights off.
People like that all the time.
I don't like it. Please, can you turn that off?
I mean, actually, I'll tell you one thing that I find extraordinary. When the European Parliament claims it represents...
Much better. Thank you so much. Yay!
I think the amazing thing about the European Union is the way that they are so blinkered. Because, first of all,
I was over there a few weeks ago.
When they turn around and they go, the EU is about unity in Europe, well, it's not, is it? Because let's just be clear. First of all, Greenland, which is going to become American, I'm joking. Greenland and Iceland are not members. The United Kingdom, even before, was not a big fan. Pro-European Scotland, only 40% of the country wants to leave. Right, Ireland, the support is pretty universal, but they're not in Schengen. What is it? Denmark has its own currency. Northern Europe, the Saxon countries, are largely actually...
The awkward squad.
Well, no, it's not that, because what the European Union has done is said, look, we want to be a big government Benelux country, but expanded across the whole Europe. I'll tell you something else about my Greek family. You know, I will tell you, the Greeks...
Your brother and you don't... I mean, I'm not saying anything, dodgy about your mum, but... But you do look so different.
I've got a great story to tell you, actually. We'll come back to you in a minute. Lois is quite right. So my dad looks like he owns a kebab shop, and so do both of my brothers, because they are actual Greeks. My dad's the only Greek called Stan Walker, but it's a kind of made-up name. But anyway, so when I was born, and of course I came out, sort of blonde-haired, ginger, and pale. There was some consternation, not with my mum and dad who were fairly sure that nothing had gone wrong. But there was an old bloke over the back who was about 80 years old, and he was ginger. And my dad said, he said, Stan, he said, congratulations on your new son. And my dad goes, when I catch that ginger bastard. And the bloke never spoke to my mum again for a further 20 years when they lived near each other. But
I didn't know that.
But the point I was going to make about Greece was this. They would eat rats in order to be Western European. And the sad thing, and the immorality of the EU, is that's precisely what they've been made to do. Because to put Greece in economic and monetary union with Germany simply means the following. Yeah. And we can see it in every street we drive down. Everyone's got a BMW and nobody goes on holiday in Greece. Because what has happened is...
because it's so expensive.
You've deflated the Deutschmark and you've inflated the drachma. And therefore you've created real poverty. And there's a real immorality to it. And I just feel that was something that we getting out of the EU was so important. But I think that takes us now on, Lois, to where we are today.
Okay.
When I used to work at the European Parliament, which was, it was a gravy train. I did all right financially. Also, I never paid the tax in Belgium, which was quite good news.
Never pay any tax.
I told them I was paying it in Britain, and told the British I was paying it in Belgium, probably. but anyway, why not treat yourself? The rest of it all were. But I thought the amazing thing about the EU was the way that they were so blinkered and so crazy and so it was madness. But what they did say is something that I think we've all realised they were telling the truth on. But I thought they were making like a generic point when they said, Britain is unable to rule itself. I thought they were talking about the size of the country. They'd actually met people in Westminster, hadn't they? And they'd gone, oh, bloody hell, wouldn't leave them in charge of running a bath.
Yeah, but I actually completely believe that since we have been in the European Union, that the people that have been put into Parliament, the politicians, are not of the calibre that they would have been before. No. Because they're not, because they're just, stamping through. You told me when you worked in Parliament, they were just stamping through European legislation. They weren't actually challenging it or debating it or doing anything at all.
Oh, I'll tell you something, and I don't mean to be rude if any of you are mates with him. I mean, having a conversation with Nigel Mills is like having a vasectomy, isn't it? I mean, that man has got no personality whatsoever. The computer game was probably the more interesting. It was amazing, actually, when he got into trouble for being playing that computer game, Candy Crush. I thought to myself, well, that's kind of the only interesting thing about it. But the thing is...
If Candy Crush is the most interesting thing about you need to really work on your hobbies and interests, don't you?
Which I think he tried. But the point I'm making is he wasn't a bad person, But actually,
It was just boring.
when you look at the great parliamentarians in history, and you look at what we've got in the House of Commons, and I'll tell you the big problem, and God, what a thing to say in the bloody Amber Valley. But you know, I've real concerns about the candidates departments of political parties. I really do. The Conservative Party candidates department was so bad that Viscount Monkton said they'd been taken over by the KGB because nobody could be as...
To be fair, Viscount Monkton says that everything's been taken over by the KGB, doesn't he?
There's a reasonable point.
Yeah.
But actually, they were so the candidates they were putting through were so bad that actually it was hard to believe. And what happened every time with the Conservative Party, where I was a member for the longest period, what would happen with the Conservative Party is you need the yin and yang, didn't you? You need the yin of the party centrally wanting their own people and wanting to do their thing, and the yang of people locally wanting their own people. And the big problem that happened with the Conservative Party, as far as I could see,
it's been taken over by Liberal Democrats.
and the candidates were picked on the basis they would say nothing during the election, and that is fine at the election. What the problem is, the election in 15 years' time, these are the people that are going to attempt to run the country, and enter Chris Grayling. Right, I mean, funnily enough, I actually like Chris Grayling in small doses. That's as much as you can muster. But what you are talking about, Chris Grayling has been chosen because he is the most bland person possible. There is not going to be an embarrassing headline about Chris Grayling because there won't be a headline about Chris Grayling.
Well, that's because the globalists who, you've got the Tories and Labour who are two cheeks of the same arse. Sorry to swear.
I think that ship sailed about.
Yeah, you probably do. The Tories are completely and utterly. They're the same as Labour.
I tell you what.
They are.
I tell you what does pain me about the demise of the Conservative Party, and maybe this is a stupid thing to care about, but the Conservative Party has millions of pounds worth of assets, little association buildings and all this sort of thing, which will now be surrendered to the Liberal Democrats that have destroyed the party.
Yeah, when they went into coalition with the Liberal Democrats, it became the Liberal Democrats.
You know what? I've got some sympathy with David Cameron. I'll tell you why.
Really?
Oh, no, tough crowd, right? I'll tell you why I've got sympathy.
You like pigheads?
I'll tell you what. Do you know the best thing about that story? There's a joke on Fleet Street.
You told me that wasn't true.
Yeah, there's a joke on Fleet Street. If you can't think of anything to say about somebody negative, just pretend they shagged a pig at university, and then somebody put it in an actual book about him. But I'll tell you the thing about David Cameron that I think is really, really significant. I think by the time he realised the problem, it was too late. He thought that what he needed to do in 2010 was deal with Broom's disastrous running of the economy. What he actually needed to do was deal with Blair's constitutional reforms. And I think by the time he realised that he wasn't...
The Quangos and things like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can name any right-wingers on the Quango. I mean, if you think about it, Toby Young was removed from the education thing. Sir Roger Scruton was attacked. There's virtually none of them. I mean, I'll tell you something. When you read these, I think it's still publicappointments.org.uk, and you see what they're looking for, applications particularly welcome from, and you think, a Ministry of Defence Quango, where we're particularly concerned about underrepresented people. Well, I'm particularly concerned about having a military, right? Yeah. But I had a friend of mine who got on the Transport for London Quango by listing his mode of transport as pedestrian. And he said he was underrepresented because nobody ever talked about pedestrians.
Did you also have a friend that declared that he was some sort of underrepresented religion or something?
Oh yeah, well you can do that. I mean, I've had friends of mine who've declared male friends who've declared themselves as transsexual lesbians in order to get onto it. But what's amazing is we have a tendency.
Transsexual lesbians, doesn't that just mean a man?
Bloke.
A man. A straight man.
Let me just say, Lois, nowadays, isn't it just a bloke is the answer to so many
things?
things?
It is, yeah, it really is.
But what really? My dad always said, there's only one question I want to ask when I see one of them on the telly. I think, well, we're not asking that. Tasteful. But yeah, no, funny enough, I had a friend of mine, this is a sad story. This is kind of one of the things that I think is so dangerous for this country now. A friend of mine came to me when I worked at the House of Commons, and he said, Andre, can you help me become a magistrate? And I said, well, it depends what you mean by help you. I mean, I can help you fill out the paperwork, but obviously I'm not a decision maker, and even if I was, it'd be improper to push one of my mates forward, unless you're the Labour Party. But okay. But he said to me, no, I've passed all of it. I've done. He said, the problem is there's a diversity quota. So because I'm a white, heterosexual, middle-aged, middle-class man, they're waiting for, I don't know, Mrs. Umbutu or something to come over from Nigeria to...
He was born Mr. Umbutu.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and I said to him, you've made a huge mistake. I said, I bet when you filled out the application you wrote, after studying engineering at Cambridge, I set up a highly successful engineering firm, went through this, was involved in the Rotary Club and all that sort of thing. Yeah, that's exactly what I wrote.
In the past, that would have been the correct thing to do.
I said, you should have written, as the father of a disabled child, I understand the challenges. And he said, but my disabled son has got nothing to do with it. I said, you will never get through the vetting until, don't use the word vetting, note yourself. Okay, you'll never get through this. Because the reality is, what they want you to say is, as a lesbian, I understand the issues of lesbianism in prison, rather than I'm really good at building walls, bars, and razor wire. They're not interested, and so what happened to this country, I think, is very simply this: you ended up with a government, in defence of the Conservatives, you ended up with a government that could not govern the country, where decisions that they attempted to make were simply vetoed at committee. And I'll tell you something else. Look, forget this government of experts nonsense. We're a democratic country. Look, anybody who sits on an environmental board is an environmental lunatic. For the same reason why I was on the debating club committee at university, because I'm an extremist when it comes to debating. Right, what you don't do is, you don't put your entire government in the hands of individual factional cause groups sitting on their own committees together. That's how you end up in a position with Natural England, where any time the government wants to build something, they find some crested newt and end up vetoing the scheme. You end up in a situation which Mr. Colin Rayner is in Wraysbury, in Berkshire, where for 200 years his family have been dredging the Thames to avoid flooding in Conebrook, Wraysbury and Datchet on the fringes of the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. 10 years ago, the Environment Agency came to them and said it was harmful to the fish. And now, every single year, that community floods, and the Environment Agency are telling them it's as a result of climate change. Well, it may well be.
Climate change, what a joke.
But Mr. Rayner's great-great-great-great-grandfather was suffering from the same climate change 200 years ago. And does it depress you about the fact... Look, you've got 2 kids, Lois. Does it not depress you that they are inheriting a world where we live like this, where the abject stupidity... Oh, by the way, before you answer that, can I tell you about the Windsor Guards? This is a great story. About government.
I will speak at some point.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll tell you what, no. Talk for a second, I'll tell that story in a second.
I don't want to, no. No, I was going to say, what I find depressing is my son calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning, so can you put 100 quid in my account? So that
how is the Midland Casino these days?
Oh, let's not talk about that. But yeah, I mean, the whole climate change thing. I actually think, and Nigel Farage thinks this as well, that the 22 and under people are not woke. They're not woke.
No.
Because they're rebelling. Because their parents are the wokes. Their parents are the people saying, you can't say this, you can't say that, and if you do this, then you're racist. My daughter said to me the other day, she's 14, she said, if I say something, a certain thing in class, I'm racist. And Lola, she's like the least racist person on the entire planet. And, she's got the biggest heart in the world.
I'll ask you this question. I mean, I get the impression that the way at school now, what you have to do is keep your mouth shut, like in the Soviet Union.
It might not surprise you, but my children don't do that.
But also, to be fair, your children grow up in Leigh-on-Sea, Southend, and that part of Essex, where actually people will be quite supportive of free speech. I suspect if you're a kid at a school in inner city Birmingham, it's going to be very different.
No, absolutely. I mean, Essex. I always say this, don't I? It's the most entrepreneurial county in the whole of Great Britain. There are more startups per capita than any other county in the whole of Great Britain, and that's women and men actually. But yeah, we've always been free thinkers. But Boudica, I like to say Bodicea actually.
Yeah.
Amberlynn, she's a good girl. My favourite girl actually. You know, we
Yeah, but okay, well in that case, let's talk a little bit about Essex, because people like that are the enemy in this country now. People who want to go out and work. I mean, I watch The Only Way is Essex. You know, you may not be into fake tan and Porsches, but at the end of the day, they've gone out.
I like the Porsches. I'm mad at the fake tan.
But the thing is about that group of people, they've gone out, they've worked, they don't want the government's hand in the pocket.
No. Essex people won't take, you know, if they took a benefit, it would be because they had an accident or something. It would be a very serious thing for an Essex person.
But I just think that sort of person is decried. I mean, I'll give a great example. I remember Lee in Lancashire, where I'm originally from, walking down the streets and all the terrace houses have been sandblasted and they've got all new windows and doors and all this, and they did look fantastic. I mean, the houses were solidly built, even though they were built for mill workers. And then there was one or two on every street that were horrible, that still had the old cladding on and old doors and whatever. And I was speaking to a bloke.
They were from Kent.
Yeah, I spoke to a bloke and I said, do you know what? I said it's great the way they've done those streets. What about those people that have still got the houses that look terrible? He said, I've got one of those houses. I said, what? He said, yeah, my house is one with the terrible cladding, without the window, without the doors, whatever. He said, can I tell you something? If you were on the social, you got it done for free. If you were a taxpayer, you had to pay £4,000 to have it done.
Really?
And I couldn't afford the £4,000. And he said, I will tell you, having worked my entire life, I get my nose rubbed in it, because I have to walk past every single house that looks better than mine, and accept that I paid the taxes for that, they paid nothing, and now I'm the scrote. And I think that we've
it's
seen...
like the pensioners that are freezing at the moment, and you've got people that have come over on the boats in hotels with the heating on maximum.
Yeah.
You know, what is that about?
Yeah, no, I'll tell you something. Where I live in Windsor, the idea that we would give a soldier with PTSD 40 grand a year for their accommodation is absolute. I mean, it would melt the skulls of anybody to do that. And of course, what happens? It's amazing actually. If you think about it, had you been in the Syrian army, you'd probably get a better deal from the United Kingdom if you came over on a boat than you'd do if you'd been in the British army. But I just genuinely think, Lois, and this is where I applaud anybody here and thousands, millions of people up and down the country, is that we've got to the stage now, I think, where we're saying we're sick of being, we're sick of being muggins. We're sick of paying the bill, and we're sick of the fact that our kids are the bands. We're sick of the fact that our houses are not as good. We're sick of the fact that, I have to prove COVID this and test whatever to come into the country. Had I bought a dinghy in northern France, I could have knocked myself out, me and 15 of my 25-year-old male friends. It's complete and total hypocrisy. And then, of course, this stupid thing, Lois, which is this allegation of racism. Do you know what? I agree with what Steve Bannon said at the speech in Paris. It's time to just embrace it and say, do you know what the definition of racism is? The definition of racism is somebody the left doesn't like.
No,
and that's it.
I agree, absolutely. And you've met Aisha, my sister. My stepfather's Jamaican, she's mixed race. And she said to me, you have people coming over on the boats, and it's not that they're not English, it's that we don't know who the bloody hell they are.
Yeah. No, we just don't want fuckers, that's what it is.
I've seen you invited for a bust arena.
But I mean, why would someone throw their passport in the sea? Why would someone, why don't they want people to know who they are? And you've got guys coming in who say that they're kids and they're 25 years old.
Do me a favour, Lois, because I think not everybody will have personal experience of this, but perhaps you can tell us about your daughter and some of these migrant men, because she's bumped into some of them.
Right, my first wolf whistle, right, it's so innocent now. When I was wolf whistled the first time, it's a bit dodgy actually thinking about it. I was 12 or 13, but I was quite, and I was walking back.
Big for your age.
Yeah, something like that. And I was walking back from school, and it was a wolf whistle, and I looked behind me because I thought, oh, who's the woman they're wolf whistling at? And that was my first wolf whistle, and it was pretty innocent, and the person then drove on, right? Lola's first wolf whistle, my daughter's first, it wasn't a wolf whistle. It was a big massive group of guys that, you know, immigrants, who made her feel so extraordinarily uncomfortable that she didn't even really want to go out anymore.
It's horrendous.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the other thing that, just from a technical point of view about immigration, I remember, obviously, I said I worked for the European Parliament. When I lived in Belgium, you know, obviously, I didn't interact with my local ward councillor. You know, I didn't
Who
know...
are you all for seeing that?
I didn't know my next door neighbour, Ursula von der Leyen. She really does it for me.
Really?
Like,
Yeah.
she's like...
That's not what I heard.
She's like a crap Hillary Clinton, isn't she? But the thing is...
I didn't know you had a mother thing going on.
I'll tell you, if you're desperate. But I'll tell you something that I genuinely think you find, and I think this was really the point of this whole thing about the protests in Southport. I think that people were saying, look, there are people coming to our country who've got no skin in the game, right? Who bluntly, if they were to steal from the local shop, you know, they haven't known the shopkeeper for 15, 20 years. It isn't their uncle's best mate. You know, if they steal somebody's bike, it's not their cousin's mate from school that they're stealing from. They're just plonked down there and have no care or attention for the area. And I'm afraid it is simply a fact that people who are immigrants to a particular area will not have connection with the community. And that, I think, is what causes the level of criminality. But to go even further than that, I think the great danger of all of this is that we have said it is unpatriotic to be patriotic. We have said that if you are told by your neighbour to learn English, your neighbour's probably a racist. You know, there was somebody who contacted my show the other day at Christmas. A teacher in their school had said, look, we're very worried about offending people. Obviously, saying Jesus was the Son of God is haram, and therefore against Islamic teaching. I think I'm very concerned that Christmas songs are a hate crime, and we should stop playing them at Christmas. And that's the level you've got to. Whereas actually my view is very, very simply this. If you want to come from the Islamic world and we need your skills, and by the way, I think there are big question marks about the number of skilled people you're bringing in. But then I'm afraid you're coming to a Christian country and you're just going to have to put up with it. If you don't like Christian prayers, go to Riyadh. It doesn't bother me, right? It's perfectly fine, but it's us that have to constantly change. And I think that people do not think that their society's got better as a result.
No, I totally agree with you. We are a Christian country. We are a white country. There's only, I think it's 1% or 1.5% of couples are in mixed race relationships. Well, you wouldn't take that from adverts on the telly, would you?
No, and actually, do you know, it's really funny about this mixed race, the mixed race couples thing.
Well, it annoys my mum. She's in a mixed race relationship.
What, it annoys her that she's in a mixed race relationship?
No.
Well, I've met the bloke, I mean, to be fair, I understand the point.
He thinks, my Jamaican stepfather thinks that it's been done deliberately to cause racial disharmony.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. He thinks that, he said that there's an over-representation, and he hasn't noted, he experienced racism when he was a younger man, but he hadn't for a while.
Yeah.
And then recently, it's all kicked off again,
Well,
and he thinks it's because there's a deliberate information of racial stuff because of the overrepresentation in adverts and things like that.
But I would say to you that I think that certainly when I was a kid, the number one political issue in this country was not race. I think it is now, which I find thoroughly depressing. But I have to say, I always say this, by the way. I've got a mate who is Ukrainian who told me this about ethnic cleansing. Now you're going to be stunned by this. Now, whatever you think about that part of Eastern Europe, and obviously they've got a lot to be ashamed of for their performance in the Second World War, but that area is a place where ethnic cleansing has happened backwards and forwards in multiple ways. And he said, this is how you ethnically cleanse people in Eastern Europe. Pull down their statues, first of all. Ban their history from being taught in schools. Uncontrolled, moving people into the area. Make sure that the TV only has the new people on. Don't put the old people on. Start translating public documents into the language of the new people. Discriminate against the old people in housing. Discriminate against them in university scholarships. And start building your own statues. Then dismantle their churches and replace them with the religious institutions of the new incomers. And he said to me, and you know, you can be upset about this or feel that I'm being unfair. he said to me when he watched the King's speech, he said, but that choir has been picked because it has the minimum number of white children in it. And I thought, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And he said that what he finds extraordinary about the United Kingdom is that if he was watching this in Ukraine, the message would be it's time to leave. Now, he said what he finds extraordinary about it is that it's been done. So he said, originally, because he only came on fairly recently, he said, originally I assumed that Rishi Sunak was responsible because he's non-white. He said, but it became obvious very quickly that that was my own naivety and I didn't know anything about it. He said, I've now come to conclude that you are ethnically cleansing yourselves from your communities.
Right, okay, should we have a little break and then come back after?
Are you happy with that? If you're happy,
Yeah, and then we'll have some questions.
And then we'll do some questions. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
You video it.